Hi everyone, welcome to the panel of today. I am Tasneem Jaffa. I'm a senior project coordinator and learning designer at SILT, and I lead the design stream for the Amathuba migration. So by now, I hope that all of you have heard of this. You may not have accessed the platform yet, but you've maybe heard that we are moving to a new platform. And today we want to hear about the experiences about those who have piloted their course this semester. We've had about 40 pilots this semester, and we'll hear from 3 of them today. Before we start, I'll just introduce each of our panelists before I get into the questions. First up, we have Grant Oosterwijk. He's a second-year information systems course convener in IT architecture in the Commerce faculty. He serves as an at-large director and executive of the Southern African chapter of the Association of Information Systems and is a member of other sort of institutions. Grant is currently completing his PhD in information systems with a focus on big data analytics and decision value. Next up, we have Tebogo Mofokeng, who convenes a second-year course in fluid mechanics in the engineering faculty. Tebogo is a civil engineer with over 12 years of private sector experience in wastewater treatment facilities. She is currently enrolled to complete her PhD with the UCT Water Research Group. Her research interest is in alternative water sources and the impacts of drought and sea level rise on coastal urban water infrastructure. Sounds really impressive. And then last up, we have Dr. Warren Lilly, who convenes a humanities postgraduate course on learning and teaching. Warren is in the School of Education within the Psychology of Education stream, where his work with postgraduate students focuses on how developmental theory can inform and improve teaching and learning practices. His research focuses on the question of digital equity and meaningful integration of technology within the classroom. So that was quite a mouthful, but at least you know a little bit about each person. I'm going to hop onto the questions. Okay, so my first question, I'm going to give it to Grant. So when you answer the question, just can you briefly describe how you run the course in terms of both utilizing online and face-to-face? So what was your experience of using the platform, and what was the biggest adjustment you needed to make to the new platform?
Okay, thank you. Moving over from managing Vula as an example for some of my courses, and then of course with the move to Amathuba, I think it was pretty daunting at the beginning, learning a new learning management system. Now, although in our department we developed quite a number of different systems as an example for projects and honors and other master's programs as an example, I think way at the beginning, the process was quite, I think, not necessarily intense, purely because we had a lot of training. So the training really helped us to really get comfortable with the system. But again, I think one of the objectives or the mindset that I had at the time was to know that what is currently the learning outcome for the course, firstly. What is some of the tools that I would really need? So again, going back to what we've done with Vula, we used the gradebook, we used the survey tool, we use many other tools, of course. Announcements, very important. And then, of course, understanding the assignments and how your tests and quizzes, of course, work. So I think at the beginning, I created a benchmark in my head. What are some of the most important components of the learning management system that I need? In this case, of course, Amathuba. And how I will, of course, communicate that to the students. Because I think at the beginning, some students are, of course, still running on Vula, as an example. So I think for the students, it was quite a daunting experience moving over to Amathuba. But again, the training was done pretty well. I was pretty impressed with that. So that really put me into a very comfortable position. And I think continuously also, of course, having that engagement. So although we tend to depend a lot on CHED and SILT, as an example, to really provide our students with the necessary skills, as an example, to use it, I think also as a lecturer, it's important to also guide your students during that very first day, so of starting class. So as an example, of course, I think rule of thumb is always to, of course, have the material online a week, 2 weeks before the time. Sorry, not 2 weeks, but a week. I think that's a bit over the top, but again, also, of course, navigating. So there was quite a bit of, I won't necessarily say hiccups, but of course, as it is still a pilot, I think for me it was quite well, and I think also the feedback from one of our students that sat in some of the sessions with Ched was pretty good feedback as well. Yeah. So I say that yeah, moving over from digital and of course presenting what we have on the Amathuba system to the students face to face, I don't think there was major problems at all. Yeah. So it was comfortable. I usually have this thing saying, what is your comfort level from 1 to 10? So I usually go with that. So I would ask my students, what's your comfort level? And then you have random views in class saying, it's a 6, it's a 7. I'm still working on Vula, so now I need to manage Amathuba as well. And I think we need to be realistic in terms of what our students are currently going through. We tend to always say that is the lecturer comfortable in the way that we teach? As an example, is our students attending classes? But again, I always ask the question, and the mindset that I have had created with my students is that they are actually the testers, right? They are testing the system, so providing honest feedback, as an example, is very important. But again, from an information systems perspective, in a way, the view is that when you go to industry one day, you will be a tester. So as an future IS graduate, give as much feedback as possible. And I think that really helps. But again, this is very biased because many of the students are, of course, BCom IS majors. So yeah, they will be pretty brutal in their feedback. Yeah.
As a ex-IS honors graduate, I know exactly what you're saying. We're super critical. I'd like to go now to Tebogo with the same question. A little bit about your course and then sort of what has been your experience of using the platform and how you've adjusted.
Okay, so for me, I started working in 2021. So it made sense to just jump in and do Amathuba instead of trying to do Vula. So I didn't have any hang-ups of, I have to learn something new. And just from a user perspective, I really preferred the look and feel of Amathuba. So when I tried to put myself in the position of the students, because I'm also a UCT graduate, but I graduated before Vula. So when I look at Vula, I'm just like, how am I expected to learn? So I was very excited to find something that was a lot more user-friendly and very intuitive. So in terms of hiccups, I didn't really have any because I guess I came in with sort of an open mind. And I kind of had a clean slate to design the course in a way that I wanted, but the previous professor really had a very clear structure in terms of learning outcomes, and he felt that the online system worked really well. So what I did is they'd have weekly material that they'd have to cover, and then we'd have a 3-hour contact session. In the first 45 minutes, we have a very sort of engaging discussion of some of the concepts where, they give me feedback, we work through sort of a test kind of level difficult problem, and then they spend the rest of the time going through some tutorial problems because my course is very mathematical based. But I think in a nutshell, I really enjoyed it.
Over to you, Warren. Do you relate to Grant and Tebogo?
Yeah, Jax, definitely. Yo, guys. Yeah, I mean, so, like, for instance, I've got, like, a little bit of mixed feelings for both, like, I've got a bit of both of people's experience. The course that I was piloting, EDN 4057S, is one of our largest honors courses. We have anywhere between 40 to 50. In 2020, I think we had 60. And that was all done online, and I joined the university during the pandemic to come and lecture. So I developed everything pretty much on Vula, and I was like, okay, but I was ready to try something new and see what it was about, and I was kind of keen to try some new tools. And I have to give it up to Silt. I mean, I worked with Kristen, I worked with you, I worked with Widad, and they really, really helped me as well to try and think about options and opportunities that I could try and leverage the platform with. And I number one, enjoyed playing around with tech. I mean, it's kind of where my research goes and what I try and do with teachers. But I found the platform beautiful. It was easy to use. Students also took to it very, very well. And yeah, in a nutshell, it was wonderfully interesting and fun in a weird way, if that makes sense. Yeah.
See, you're all very positive. These answers were not planted.
No.
I'll go into the next question. And I'll start with you, Tebogo. Which aspects worked well, and maybe particularly around like the tools you use or like specific things you find useful of the platform that you used in your teaching?
So I think mine was sort of very basic because I wanted not to try too many fancy things and just keeping it simple. So I tried to use a grades book, but it didn't really work for me because I realized you actually have to set the test in the platform and you must mark on it. So I found that to be a bit of a challenge because you either all online or you're half online, or so it makes it difficult to manage the grades book because they write their test, they physically write it out. So when we mark it, we PDF it, and we keep a soft copy. So I think the thing that I still struggled with, and I sort of gave up in the middle because I was like, it's not worth trying to figure it out because everything else was working. So I struggled with the grades book. I loved the quizzes, and what I forced my class to then do is that the next week's content wouldn't come on until you completed the quiz, and you had to get like 4 out of 5 right. And I think they also enjoyed that because it kind of forces them to go through the online material, and they could attempt it as many times as possible. And I think besides the tools, I like having like a person you could email and not help desk, because help desk feels like that person will get to you whenever they find time because they got like 1,000 other emails. So that was really nice. Even though if you really looked on the help sort of function of Brightspace, you could find most of the information, but it was just nice to know that there was a warm body who was willing to sort of hold your hand and help you through it. Yeah, I think those were my sort of highlights and difficulties about it.
Thank you. Grant, over to you. What aspects worked well for you, and sort of tools that you might have used in the platform for your course?
Okay. So, IT architecture, INF 2010, it's a very course intensive. So in terms of material, it's very intensive. So we do, of course, a lot of technical things, networking, security, encryption, etc. So at the beginning, we had about 182 students on the platform, and I wasn't really concerned whether it was, if it won't work as an example in terms of the infrastructure actually handling it, because of course everything is in the cloud. But I think some of the tools that was really nice is firstly the look and feel. So the user friendliness of it, feedback from students that I've seen, they access the entire Amathuba, the tool via their mobile phones, which most of our students does anyway. So I think one of the next things that was really nice is the switch between, I think it was your lessons view, and I forget the previous view that you had, which was way at the beginning. But again, the way that the entire, how it's visualized was very nice, because students can typically see from week 1 as an example to week 12. And then of course, once they click on some of those tabs, they will be able to see the presentation, the video of the presentation. And then of course, at the beginning, at the end, they will have all the recordings via Opencast, I think it was. So we haven't tested the quizzes as yet, but the exam will be on using MCQs, and of course case study based questions will be done via Amathuba, so that's going to be very exciting to see. So I think also maybe some issues that we picked up with regard to token errors as an example, which of course we have some experience with. So usually we will see an issue. I've encountered a couple of programming issues or development issues, but again that was addressed immediately, which was not a major issue. I think it was just kind of like a refresh issue on the actual web page. Yeah, but other than that, I think the announcements worked pretty well. The navigation was much better compared to what we've had on Vula as an example. And again, in the past when we were running Vula as an example, we will either train a TRA to actually develop the entire page, but now it's like pretty simple because you can just drag and drop, which is a very nice feature, and I really like that.
Thank you. Over to you, Warren, about your experiences in terms of what was useful and which sort of tools did you really take to for Amathuba?
Yeah, I have to, again, go alongside my colleagues here. For me, for instance, what I was really excited because a lot of the tools that I wanted to use with Vula, especially like external tools like Flipgrid, you know, like Jamboard, etc. They couldn't integrate inside. So you'd always, so for instance, external tools, they're not able, they don't stay within the platform itself. They have to go to another site. And what I was really excited about with Amathuba was the idea that I could keep everything, that my students didn't have to go to 5 billion different places, that I could keep them there with me, and after they'd done that activity, they could go straight in to my readings, my questions, whatever I'd said. It worked really well for Padlet. There's still some others that you got, that I've spoken about that I think that we can like look for, but Google Forms, etc. So there's a whole bunch of more tools that we can use as educators that I was excited about. I have to agree with the idea of content curation that I loved. I mean, I love being able to design my own kinds of images that I wanted to use, being able to drag, drop, pull it in, move things around. It's not like with you, if you made a mistake with the Vula page, you have to delete the Vula page, then you have to start again. This doesn't happen on Amathuba. We're saved. Right? So it's those kinds of things exciting. Assignments take seconds to set up and turn it in. My students are so happy because a lot of our honor students come from outside, and when they were submitting assignments, they, like on Vula, there's this tiny little flag that they see. Ooh, that's very loud. A tiny little flag that they see, but now they can see there's a real Turnitin index that they can click in and look at. Like, it just makes things are just more intuitive for them and for us. Those are just a few of the features I did. And I recorded one button videos because my dad said I should, and my students love them. And they integrated so seamlessly with the platform. So thanks, Vidad.
Yeah, go for it.
I can second that. I also use the one button studio. Where's all my people? There they are at the back. Yes. So I use a light board. Where you like write on a piece of glass and they're able to flip it around, because I had a lot of derivations and stuff. And then I realized, the light board is a bit too big or small. I kind of needed like maybe writing on a tablet. And they also have that functionality where when the student is watching you, it feels like they're sort of standing behind you, and they literally physically watching you work through all of that. So I really had stunning reviews about the videos that I made. And what's cool about it is that you do the recording and they're uploaded onto the platform, which was really fantastic. And one more thing, the shortcut. The shortcut is the most amazing thing. I know it's a secret, and I know everybody doesn't really know it, but the ability to, if you like the template that you've already set up, you can actually go into the code and go copy it and go put it somewhere else instead of finding a new or different template. So I found that to save me so much time.
There's actually even an easier way, but you can chat to me afterwards. This is a good time for an ad break. So people are talking about the one button studio and the light board. So if you want to film a video sort of DIY style, can chat to Noel or any of the DMU members, digital media unit members. They have a light board, so if you do lots of equations, they have a podcast studio, so please bother them. Great, I'm glad it was that easy for you. Okay, going on to the third question. So I'm sure some colleagues in the room will be moving to Amathuba, some next year, some in the future. What is your advice to them, both in terms of preparing the course and then maybe also just in terms of running the course? I'll start with you, Warren.
Okay, so this was my major challenge. For me, the best metaphor I can give for how Amathuba works. So if you think about Vula, you click a Vula page and things come down. Amathuba is like a picture book. In the sense that pages work like as you're moving through like that. So you've got to try and think carefully about what comes first, what comes second, and you can really try and imagine like a learning pathway that you're going to create for your students. It's a little bit better, like it's better for me, and it feels more intuitive for what I want to do. So my advice really is to try and think about what you've got on Vula, and then think about how you might want to make that translate. And try and get a sense of that. The great thing is all your stuff from Vula imports beautifully in the background, so you can pull anything that you want back up from it. You're not going to lose anything, which I was really excited about because I had spent 2 years curating my Vula course, and then I was like, well, I didn't want to start from over again, so that was really nice. Other kinds of things, and I think it's just like really important, is if thinking about your learning activities, or if you're doing purely asynchronous, or if you're doing blended like I did, just try and think about where your learning activities come in. And again, one of the really nice features, especially if you make your learning activity either using the quizzes or one of the other features or a Padlet, etc., and you keep it within Amathuba, is that you're actually able to see who you're able to actually see how long students spend on that activity, when they accessed it. In Vula, that report took a very long time to generate. You can see that on the fly. So for me, for instance, with a class of about 50 students who have different levels of participation in my class, in face-to-face sessions, I'm able to go back, look on there, see who is participating, notice, hey, they haven't checked in. So there's another level that we can get closer to where our students are at that I liked as well. So that's just another thought that I'd talk about that as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the stats functionality, learning analytics functionality is really great in terms of seeing student progress and also seeing students who are falling behind and mechanisms for student success. Toboko, I'll go over to you. What advice do you have for our future Amathubas?
So I think maybe to answer it, I'll kind of have a broad discussion on it. What I felt was that it feels like the perfect time to reimagine our curriculum a little bit, but not by like turn it upside down, but just do those 1 or 2% changes. And because the whole department is going to have to change, I feel that the colleagues that are in charge of like the curriculum development, I feel like this is such an exciting opportunity to, instead of selling it as we have to move to a new platform, it's like we can pull that thread throughout our whole curriculum that aligns with the kind of graduate that we want. And we got this perfect opportunity to get people around the table together because they actually have to rethink it. Rethinking assessments in a much more broader way and not just the silo, it's my course, I want to do it this way. So I think I'm kind of excited about that, but a little bit sad that I think it might be missed because there's not enough time, and it's December and it's January and people just need to do it. But I think if we just paused and maybe even just found the one thing that we could change.
I think that's a great comment, and I think especially for people who are maybe moving their courses later, you can actually start thinking about it now, in advance, in a few months or years in advance about the changes you want to make. Grant, over to you. What advice do you have?
Well, I think start early.
Early.
I think that was the biggest problem for me. But yeah, so when the question or request came through that if we can put INF 2010S onto the course, onto the new LMS, I said, okay, let's do it. Hopefully it's not going to be too much work. But I think as part of the migration, as Warren said, from Vula to Amathuba, I think that was really the major key, because my biggest concern was that all the recordings, as an example, that we've done over the last 2 years, the changes in the recording, the quizzes, the assignments, as an example, that will, of course, I thought it was going to be a manual process. So now when I was told that my sandbox was ready, I was like, what? Like, what's going on here? Like, I can see all my material. So I think, yeah, I'll prepare early. And I mean, there's a lot of information. But again, as I said at the beginning, my view was just to focus on what are the things that I need at the moment. And as I progressed through INF 2010, as an example, I started adding and tweaking a little bit. I mean, some of the things that my colleagues were saying was things that I didn't actually use as an example. But now again, as part of 2023, I know that for INF 2010S next year, as an example, I'll be able to integrate many of those things. Yeah, and I mean, it's a playground at the moment. So learning management system, I mean, you learn, you manage, and yeah. So I see. We've also created a sandbox for the IS department. So there was a request from one of our staff members to say that, can we at least have a sandbox up and running? So I think that was also a very nice thing to get all the other colleagues involved. As an example, you can go ahead and break things, so to speak, just to get your hands dirty before you actually start moving or being part of the migration. Yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Just to clarify some of the things you said, if it sounded a bit jargony. Courses are auto-migrated from Vula to Amathuba, so basically you won't have to build everything from scratch. Although if you do want to redesign your curriculum, you can start from scratch. You can have a blank canvas if you want, but most things will be moved, so you don't have to worry about losing anything that you've done on Vula. Those are sort of my 3 questions. I do want to leave time for questions for the panel. So if anyone has questions for any of the panel members, now is a good time.
Hi, I'm Noel. I'm the online head of online at SILT. You were definitely paid, all 3 of you. I'm like, give us some dirt, like pain. No, I'm kidding. So we face a little bit of like resistance about the fact that students won't be able to manage Amathuba and Vula at the same time. What is your students' experience about that? Yeah, and you can all 3 answer. And then are students feeling like while they're still on Vula and the other courses that haven't been migrated to Amathuba, are they sort of anxious to get it to stay, or are they like, I just want to get a sense from your students on what are they going through, because they actually, as the pilots, they are a really good test for us to figure out whether students are happy with both, or students are eager just to like migrate everything, or they're going to be frustrated. Yeah, because this is the type of communication we take to the lecturers as well.
I guess it's a bit difficult because we haven't, in the surveys that we did, we only surveyed how they're feeling about the course. You know, so the feedback we got was sort of just in chatting. So my 2nd-year students, there's 67 of them in the class, didn't have any problems juggling Vula and Amathuba. And that was the only course that they had that was on Amathuba. Everything else was on Vula. And in my department, the biggest angst was, they are going to die. They will not be able to. I think what makes it difficult is adjusting to each lecturer's style of setting out their course on Vula, because everything is so different and you must go to different places to find information. And I do think there will be a critical point where there's like, 50% is still on Vula and some is still on Amathuba, and people are just feeling a little bit angst. But I think if we can move through it quickly and systematically in the next 2 to 3 years, I think they'll cope, because the interface is so much better. Like you're kind of going through it just like, I wish all courses were looking like this, So I think it's because we move into a better platform. My gut feel, and from reading the students, is that it's not actually such a big problem. I didn't get your second question, but maybe I should let my colleagues do that one.
Yeah, I think so. INF 2010 is, as an example, runs from Monday to Wednesday. So on Mondays, I used to do a verbal check-in with my students to ask, were there any issues in terms of their experience? If there was maybe a code issue or error in the web page, as an example, I would usually just ask them to send me a snippet of if there's any issues, system issues, then I will forward it to the SIL team. In this case, Thomas King. But I think there was a couple of students, there was a bit of a debate in the class because of the management in terms of moving from Vula to Amathuba. So I'm not going to say that won't be a concern. But I think reminding students, as an example, that this is a pilot. And I mean, no one really likes change, right? So they started out first year on Vula, they moved to 2nd year, suddenly they need to do Vula and learn a new management system. But I think if you just put them into a safe space to say that things are changing, we are addressing some of the limitations that we've experienced over the number of years with Vula, just to get their minds, put their minds at ease, as an example. And I think that really helped as we transition. I think one of the things that also came through later in my course, because we also do Amazon Web Services, where we do a lot of development within labs, online labs, as an example. And that's, again, also another LMS system that I've added. But then some of the feedback that I received in the latest course eval was, so we now had to learn, we did Vula, we did Amathuba, and how you introduce AWS. So that was a major issue for them, but that's been part of the course for a very long time. Okay.
Thanks. Are you?
I mean, the only thing that I can add really on my side is my students were fine, generally. The only problem came in with assignments. There was a lot of confusion about like how they could find things. So, I mean, what we did after the first assignment is just really take them through tutorial. We did one, but not everyone was at class the day. We know the struggle. So I did film a video, but they didn't look at that either. So, but anyway, before the second assignment that just came in last week, we took them through, now that the video again was reposted about where things went and what to click. And that also just made them, like, creating a safe space, you know, like showing the things. And if they emailed us, like both me and my colleague are on there just to say we can help. And then if we need help, I would just email with Tasneem, Kristen. Yeah, you get, again, pilot, things help. But I mean, I think trust students more. I mean, they're also keen for, they also want easier experiences, and that's been my general feel, is that they found a lot of the things easier for them. So that's just my perspective so far.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the panel? We died as a question.
Can we have a question not from someone in Silt after we're done? So all you non-Silters start stacking up your questions.
There's a non-Silt question.
First we're done.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely to hear your experiences, and shout out to Warren. It was so nice working with him, so open-minded and easygoing. Just a question. If there is something on Amathuba that you could improve or change, what would that be? And that's for all three.
It's like, yes.
I think I found it difficult to send emails. You know, once you've done the search and then you want to send it to the students, like, it's stupid. I can't explain it. Like, it feels like it just sends to them one by one and BCs everybody, and even, like, I can't explain it, but all I can say is that maybe I'll find the right words and just go play around with it again. But when you've done a search, especially when you're looking for the students that are struggling, and you just want to send it to them, but you also want to sort of copy the tutor or the head tutor just to keep them in the loop of things, it doesn't give you the functionality to not blind copy them. You know, like and then you almost have to take a screenshot of all the names so that you can go, yeah. So I found that, if I can fix that, yeah. And I think the other one was, but I guess this is just a problem that I kind of forgot about. My external examiner still struggles to access the platform as a visitor with his external email address. While I have colleagues that are on my course as visitors, I don't know what the term is, that are able to see everything. But for them, he said, and I did send to Helpdesk, and Helpdesk did send, like, this is how you do it. But he says every time he can see all the announcements, but every time he tries to click on anything, it just sends him back somewhere else. So I think that would be cool, especially for, you know, because it's nice for the external examiners to have a bird's eye view of what you're doing. So by the time they actually are examining, they've kind of been part of the class. So those are the two things for me.
Noted.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a tough question. It's a bit early to ask that, I think.
Nothing is a good answer as well.
Well, I'm going to be very biased. Yeah, if you can integrate Amazon Web Service, that will be wonderful. So I can do some labs. But yeah, I think even something that my colleague said, you know, these small changes in terms of functionality, emails as an example, as my colleague mentioned. But I think not for now. I think as part of my own reflection as an example, it's going to take time for me to answer that question. Yeah, so can't add much there. Sorry.
I think for me, as again, like the reason that I got really excited about Amathuba was the capacity to include external tools, taking them to other spaces and having that inside Amathuba, and having that work flawlessly. And with that Padlet it does. I mean, but when I tried, as I said earlier, that when I try to integrate others, they don't work so well. And that's something that I would really like to have. And I've said as much. And yeah, I mean, and then like, yeah, I mean, and assignments is pretty much the same. Everything else is pretty much, yeah. So, I mean, that's my one little piece.
Assignments is better because you can do detailed feedback, like word and track changes.
Just a quick question. is there anything you miss from Vula or your students? Like, because they are using, I don't know if you're also doing one course on Vula and one on Amathuba. Is there something that you would have rather liked to be migrated?
I don't really miss anything on Bula, so to be honest, I mean, yeah, I don't really miss anything. I think it's clean slate. We start fresh, so I think change is good for as we are moving towards this new platform. The fact that it's in the cloud makes it even much nicer as well. So things such as downtime, as an example. A couple of weeks ago, September, I had to move the test. And all the materials, of course, are on Amathuba, so there was a bit of a debate in class where students were saying, yeah, but with all the downtime and issues that we had on the network, with Amathuba obviously being in the cloud, you could have just downloaded the thing and go to a cafe, as an example. But then there was, of course, an issue with, because Vula was down, so you don't have necessarily that excuse of something actually being down with Amathuba. So yeah, I think the entire architecture of Amathuba is also well set up, but I've also used it to my advantage because even some of the discussion that we had in class, because we teach a lot of cloud computing, as part of the course, issues was in terms of what are we currently facing within UCT with network downtime, etc. So you, in a way, need to develop an IT architecture that is cloud-based and as free as Amathuba. So I think that also brought, as part of the case study, was quite interesting because of all the downtime and issues that we had on our UCT network, and now comparing those issues with, I think, a more redundant solution in this case, what we have as the new LMS. Yeah.
Are you good? Okay, we have a question from Richard.
Hi, I'm also a pilot user, Amathuba. My experience hasn't been quite as I won't be quite as extravagantly excited as the panelists. In general, the experience for myself and the students has been positive. Things I would change, for example, definitely part of the navigation. So, for example, on Vula, in a lesson, you could, at the end of a bit of text, have on your lessons page as many lessons pages as you like, and then have a link to a quiz. In Amathuba, you have your lesson, and then you've got to say to your students, click on the link on the left to the quiz. They click on that link. Then that opens a page on which they have to click on a link to open the quiz tool. So it's 3 extra clicks or 4 extra clicks to open a quiz, to open an assignment, to open a poll from content, which I found quite frustrating. Another issue I found was with assignments. You can't see the assignment question. You set the assignment 6 weeks ago. You don't remember what the assignment question was, and you want to go in and mark the assignment. You don't have that student view of the assignment right there. I found that quite a bit frustrating. Even though you have the rubric, which is nice, works the same as in Vula. I found my quizzes didn't import from Vula at all. I had to redo my quizzes from scratch. The resources folder.
I do understand. About 2 minutes, Richard. Just letting you know.
I do understand the reasoning behind not having a resources folder, but putting everything in that structure and kind of fitting everything into that structure, I found extremely constricting. It's great if you're just sort of doing synchronous online or asynchronous teaching, but I found it very restrictive. It didn't give me the freedom that I felt I would have liked. Thanks.
We have a minute, so I'll just respond to that one. I will say my colleagues are part of the pilot, so sometimes things weren't implemented yet, and we're still currently improving the platform every day. there are some things that are different and also some things we're still figuring out. You know, there's still like an optimized way of doing things, and things that took us a while to figure out in Vula, those things are still improving and being figured out every single day. So I think some things we can obviously work with, and some things are actually just different, like the way the resources folder works on Amathuba. I'd like to thank our panelists and the questions we had today. Yeah, thanks.